Hi, I'm KUDO Mal, Branch Chief of KUDO Wales in the UK. I'm on a mission to raise awareness for KUDO and the benefits of being a martial artist. KUDO is a full contact mixed martial art and combat sport developed by Grandmaster Azuma Takashi. In my opinion, KUDO is the perfect way for martial arts to pressure test the efficiency and their technique as well as their fighting ability, as it's the closest thing you're going to get to a real fight.
Today I have the pleasure of introducing to you Welsh-born Pol Wong, a monk ordained in Shaolin Temple in China. I'm keen to find out if he believes that the Chinese arts are still effective in comparison to modern MMA.
Are you there? Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Nice to see you.
Yeah, and you. I was wondering what your accent would be like.
Oh, yeah. Next lad, mate.
Yeah. So you're locked down, right?
Yeah. But I come to the gym every day anyway.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm practically in lockdown here, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, mental health.
Yeah.
What a tool have we got in front of us,
Yeah.
and what a valuable thing.
Yeah.
Never mind about fighting for a minute. I mean,
yeah.
Can we just put that aside for a second and think how important the
Yeah.
potential of this is for mental health? Mental health issues at the moment.
Yeah.
And they're set to get worse, you see, aren't they, you know?
Yeah,
So,
without a doubt.
You know.
Welcome to Fighting Talk. Thanks for coming on. It's a real pleasure. A fellow Welshman. North Walian, no, so our accents are a bit different, right? You know, it's an accent.
We're the proper Welsh, man.
Yeah, you got it. You can speak Welsh, and let's face it, it's as far away from the political part as you can get in Wales, aren't you? So it's good for you.
Yeah.
So let's just get straight into it, Paul. So you studied the Shaolin Temple. How did you start? You know, what was the kind of background? How did you end up going there, and what are you doing now?
Well, obviously it's a long, complicated story.
Yeah.
I'll take some shortcuts. When I was a kid, I was fascinated with martial arts, basically, as most young lads are, you know. My dad come from China and knew a little bit of Kung Fu. He wasn't a master or anything like that, but he knew some Kung Fu, a rare kind of Kung Fu that had been passed down in his family. He wasn't a good student. He wasn't really interested in it too much, but he'd learned some. So I learned a little bit off my dad, and I was fascinated by it. When I was a kid, in the 70s, it was David Carradine and Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
So me being the only Chinese in the village, sort of thing, it was always, oh, Bruce Lee this, and Kwai Chan Kane, they used to call me, Young Kwai, they used to call me, and all sorts. So it was kind of destined almost, you know. Yeah. But you know, I first started training in karate, the first school I went to, as sort of 10-year-old. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Sadishi Kato used to be in this area.
Oh, right.
So I got to train with him as a young boy. That was a fantastic experience. We had a great karate scene up here in Wrexham, you know, in Kevin, Plasmaddock. You know, I used to, at 10 years old, I used to like walk 3 miles and then wait at a bus stop for like an hour for a bus to go to Kevin, you know. Used to do that and then walk back. But because I loved it so much, you know. Yeah. And eventually I started finding different Kung Fu teachers as I got older, like, you know. I went with a lot of different Chinese people that I knew or that I got introduced to. All kinds of characters, beautiful characters, and kind people who taught me so much, not just actually about the actual content of the martial arts syllabus as such and technique, but about the cultural side of the arts as well, you see. Because for a long time I was involved with the Lau Gar Association, the British Kung Fu Association, and a lot of that was sport orientated, you see. So that was all that was available to me at the time, and it was the nearest thing to me. So I got stuck in because I wanted to train, you know. I have a good, and always have had a good discipline. So I train every day, whatever, like, you know. It's not the same as being in with people and that, is it, you know? So, you know, I enjoyed that. I trained with Brian Nelson, and I was in the squad with Neville Ray. And trained with Master Yao quite a bit and different things, you know, we've done Qigong courses and stuff. And more, I became interested in the cultural side of it rather than fighting. I enjoyed the fighting, I love sport, you know. And to me, being involved in the actual sport, you know, in combat, is an integral part of the whole martial arts. At that point in my life, I was thinking, well, if this Kung Fu is any good, you must be able to fight. Otherwise, really, it's just drivel. And so I thought it was only right to get involved and get stuck in and test it and see how it stood up. So, you know, we used to do all kinds of tournaments, the full contact karate. I've done that. The points, what's it? Martial Arts Illustrated tournaments, FSKs. And all those, we went to all those, the World Martial Arts Council ones and all sorts of stuff. Kickboxing tournaments, just to get experience and to understand, does all this work? In the beginning, actually, it didn't work at all. It was a bit of a shock. You know, actually, having said that, I come from Wrexham, like, I come from one of the villages outside Wrexham, steelworking. Everybody knows how to fight. It wasn't I wanted to learn to defend myself, if I'm honest. I wanted to be like Bruce Lee and
it's the cultural side, isn't it?
By this time, I was starting to think, this is great. You know, in the beginning, it didn't work. I found the way to make it work, and I just thought, adjusted it. You see, this is the thing. And then I wanted to understand how does it work. Because I didn't want, you see, it got to the stage, I was doing quite well in the fighting side of it. I was thinking, great, so I think I proved that, at least in principle, that it does work. To myself, anyway. But then you start to think, but are you cutting it short and you're just satisfied when you shouldn't be? We're martial artists, so we always want to push further, isn't it, you see? And it gets back to this central idea of the martial arts, of what you're doing. You're trying to find the truth in yourself, aren't you?
Exactly, totally agree.
The point is, when are you overdoing it? Where do you get the balance? And again, this is a central theme of martial arts, and all these things kept coming back to haunt me. So eventually, I left the fighting side of it alone, and I just wanted to concentrate solely on the emotional and spiritual side of it, is the word. I wanted to concentrate on that side of it. It's been a call all through my life, to be honest. And when I was in the competitions, you see, you kept confronting this thing. What will you do to win? When will you be satisfied? All these questions come up, you know, because I was lucky enough to train with some amazing fighters, you know, absolutely incredible fighters. And to have seen and trained with others, and you know, such a privilege, you know. But some, I felt, you know, it's almost like as if you sold your soul. If I can hoodwink the referee or whatever reason it is, you know, instead of being there thinking, I'm going to face this, I don't know if I'm up to scratch, but whatever I've got, I'm going to give it my all, rather than having some, you know, these kind of questions. So eventually that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to really focus on all that, and that's what I did. It came about purely by, I was a part of a group in London called the Chinese Cultural Fund. run by trained mantis master Tony Leong, well known in the UK. Great teacher. And when he'd organised for some of the monks when they'd done their first tour of, world tour, to celebrate the 1500 years anniversary, he'd arranged for some monks to go there, and I happened to be part of the or a member, so I got to meet them and give them my history, and we talked, and then he said, "Oh, come over." Because
so, I mean, let me jump on there, because obviously I don't know this story. I'm hearing this for the first time myself as well, right? So I've got this kind of, I suppose, fantasy in my head of watching myself, sat there with my father, watching Kung Fu, you know, even then I wasn't really that impressed with him. When he watched the sleeve move, it was a completely different thing, wasn't it? But I just shake my head, jump on a plane, arrive at the Shaolin Temple, knock, knock, knock. Can I come in? You know, and it kind of it always seems to go that way, but you've kind of found your way. I was on the outside of I wouldn't say a Chinese community. So this is not a question I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask it now. Is that I always felt that I could never really get my foot in the door in certain aspects in the Chinese culture and here in Cardiff, because I wasn't Chinese. I knew some Chinese people, but do you think that helped you a little bit because you're from, you know, a Chinese family, that when you met them that it was something that
I don't know at that particular point. I think it was just a sheer coincidence, a stroke of luck, really, that I got into a nice conversation, and they were interested in the conversation, they were interested in my history, particularly because, as I explained to them, my dad was the first Chinese man in North Wales. Open a Chinese restaurant, you see, so already, you know,
exactly,
a bit of that, really. And Kung Fu that I talked about, you see, my dad had told me that it came from the Shaolin Temple, you see.
Okay.
This is when I was little, I used to say to my dad I was going to go to Shaolin Temple. But my dad said, it's gone. You know, he went a long time ago. In fact, it's just a legend now.
Oh, right, okay.
So I grew up actually thinking Shaolin Temple had finished. It wasn't until 1995, when the monks came out, that I first heard anything about that the monks were, the temple hadn't been completely destroyed, and so on and so on.
Right.
But actually, as it transpires anyway, my dad was mistaken, and my whole story was wrong. My dad was talking about the southern Shaolin Temple, not Sanchez-Jones.
Okay.
And yes, the southern Shaolin Temple had been burnt down a couple of centuries ago or something, and been lost. So we'll just leave that story there, actually. It's really
Sure. Of course, maybe for another time.
At that time, when I met these monks, this is what I was thinking. Shaolin Temple is still going. I thought it was what my dad was talking about. It's not. So I was, you know, I told them about my dad's Kung Fu, and I told them that my dad said it'd come from Shaolin Temple. They said, no, it couldn't do. And well, that's what he told me. No, so show us of this thing. And he told me it was, my dad's language is Guangdonghua, is Cantonese, you see. He speaks Mandarin. In some Shaolin Temple, they speak Mandarin. They don't. The language is so Fu Jiao Pai in Cantonese. At that time, I didn't understand Mandarin, so I couldn't say what it was.
Sure.
Fu Jiao Pai is the tiger claw, the family of the tiger's claw.
Right. Okay.
So when I showed them, they could see it's come from the 5 animals somewhere. You know, you can see the classic Shaolin tiger strikes and grips. But as I said, my dad didn't learn in a school or anything like that. He just learned off his granddad.
Okay.
And his granddad was forcing him, basically.
As he do.
So he learned what he learned begrudgingly, but he never forgot it.
Right.
And for me, they were fundamental things, technique-wise, approach-wise, how to train, and always the reason why, why you're training. You see, that was most important.
It must have been a big drive for you, though. I mean, You said about you being real Welsh, and then that's in the south not being real Welsh, and you've got this banter going on, right? And I live in Barry, so near the dock, and my family came for the coal export. So my family originally from Greece. So there's like, we're such a multicultural thing. But I had this massive issue with, I've got to understand why my back's hairy, and like everybody else, I had a unibrow. I got to pluck these bad boys, otherwise I just got a line that lets me no expression, And then I had to go out there and find where my family were from, and I was so driven. I did it pretty much on my own. My auntie was with me at the time, but we went and found it. So, how old were you when you went to the Shaolin Temple?
95. I was in my late 20s, 30 maybe. Yeah. Yes, maybe 29, 30.
Wow. So I mean, from what I've seen, they start very young, don't they?
Absolutely. Oh, it wasn't easy. I was a shock. At that time, actually, 6 months before I went out there, I'd just been in the World Championship, the Amateur Kickboxing World Championships in Canada, the Ayahuasca World Championships. That was my third World Championships.
Yeah.
I had 2 European Championships, kickboxing, amateur kickboxing. So, I mean, I was used to high-level training.
Yeah.
In fact, that was one of the things that they did like about me, that although I'm just me, but I don't belong to a school, or I haven't got a master over me, I've got good discipline. I always train,
right. Yeah, it's transferable.
It's hard sometimes, isn't it? Well, we all know this, but whatever, I don't miss. And that impresses them, you see, because words, it's easy to talk, isn't it? We can all look back to these fundamental martial arts questions that are at the core of what we're trying to get the answers to, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, so anyway, I get to Shaolin Temple. I train there. I come back and I just want to go back, so I went back again, and then it was like that for the next 9 years.
Wow.
Then I had a plan to open up an international centre with Alan Foster, who we were talking about earlier on, and the World Martial Arts Council.
Yeah.
It was with a view, actually, of holding the World Martial Arts Games in North Wales in the Llangollen Eisteddfod Pavilion, you see.
Right, okay.
Well-known international venue, would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, those didn't come to fruition.
Right.
And then, so I concentrated just on teaching and developing a kind of authentic curriculum of Shaolin Kung Fu.
Right.
But to give a real taste of the flavour of what Shaolin Kung Fu is all about, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But suitable for people in our situation in the West, living with, it's relatively easy in a way when you live in a temple or a monastery, and you wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, you go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. In between that time, all you literally do is eat, train.
Yeah.
Every single day. Your mind is clear. You're in a beautiful environment up in the mountains. Conditions are hard, but that makes you even more focused.
Right.
So the conditions are right. So, but I want to pass it on. But I understand that in our situation, it's impossible really, because to come in our systems here, unless you're sort of pretty high level, you come to lessons maybe 2-3 times a week for an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. To break the continuity of your kind of mindset from your daily life, the stress, the whatever, it takes time. So to be in it, you have to create the environment and the free time, basically, and the free mind to undergo that level of training, like a professional athlete would.
But I mean, there's a couple of things. Obviously, some of the questions I want to ask you. I mean, there's a few of them kind of come together quite nicely, because some of the things that you said about like competing at the top level, competing at the top level in whatever art that it is. Obviously, there's a lot of transferable stuff there. Some of the things that, like, I've been trying to be as honest as I can online with some of the material. And some of the things that have kind of been my bugbear is that it's saturated by certain names and certain streams of thought, if you know what I mean. And like, because I've always stuck with the Japanese arts, and I've cross-trained in lots of different places, you know, and you know, I've had to go doing the Wudang sword and practice like different forms of Kung Fu, Tai Chi, that sort of thing, just to keep an open mind. But it always comes back to, for me, two main elements, which is just the warrior and the scholar. So it's kind of keeping my mind ticking over, thinking about how that's going to work, and looking and researching and thinking, wow, I think I got that. And then you've got the physical side. The warriors kind of just actually forget that, just see if it works and see what's in the body. And then through certain elements, and this is where I'd obviously seen the practice for me for the Tai Chi, because there's always that spiritual element, and people always shy away from the word spiritual, or because we all know somebody that's like probably taking it a bit too serious, or maybe doesn't got or maybe dreams a little bit. There's not enough there to give it some sort of shape that people can understand, and the communication's not being great. Maybe using more Chinese words than they need to, rather than explaining it in their native tongue, that type of thing. And lockdown has been the thing that's kind of made me think about this a lot more, because being the caged animal that I am right now in the house, occasionally I'll sneak up to my dojo and do some training and things. But I think that I suppose the question I'm asking you really is that we don't have that many, and hopefully I don't offend many people in the UK, we don't have that many people that have got that level of understanding of the Chinese arts. So online they're getting dismissed like there's, you know, the Chinese arts are no longer effective. The people that could do those things are long gone. People are dreaming, and then you get certain challenges going on, MMA challenge fights and those sorts of things. And I think that actually the bit that keeps me still training karate compared to just Kudo as a mixed martial art is that those things that I suppose you have to think in the spiritual terms of beyond the physical and just the mental, to be able to actually keep yourself mentally healthy. Think of the family, because you sacrifice so much of family time, you know, everything around you to chase these other goals, don't you? And I think that the Chinese arts have influenced, you can't say that there's not Chinese art influence in nearly all of the martial arts, you know, in the impact that they've done. And the Chinese are very proud of that as part of their society and their culture. You know, so do you think that the Chinese arts can still be effective, or are still effective when it comes to combat sports? And, you know, the culture for mental health, that seems to stand well and solid still, doesn't it, in China? I mean, what's your experience of those sorts of things? Because, I mean, you've crossed a few of them a few times now, so...
Yeah, well, it really is an interesting thing. And I mean, when we get down to the bones of it, is it effective as you say, a balancing tool for mind and body and the emotions and spiritual groundings and this sort of thing? I think that, you know, everybody agrees that undoubtedly. Is it effective as a martial art or a combat, a form of combat? I think when you put that into the context of some of these matches that are going on, I mean, clearly it's not. But Kung Fu, in actual fact, real Kung Fu it's like a knife.
Right.
A knife, like Ronnie Green, I hear him saying this all the time about a knife. It's such a great tool to have in a kitchen. You know, you can use it for anything. It's how you use. Now, I think with certainly all the ones that I've seen, the masters fighting the MMA or you know, other styles, it's pretty clear as soon as the camera goes on them to anybody who's done any kind of combat sport that these people haven't. Now, what I'm saying is they're not fighters.
No,
they're not fighters. There are, but that doesn't represent really the whole side of Kung Fu.
Yeah.
You could use the same forms, the same syllabus probably that chap's learned. And train to fight instead of training to teach and to explain the cultural side and the qigong side of it, the health side of it. that's what they're trained in, and they're very good at it. And they should, you know, they may understand even the martial aspects, but that doesn't mean you can do it.
No. So you think it's an attitudinal thing,
If going in combat sports, you know, I'd been doing the Wing Chun, Bruce Lee, all the rest of it. I'd done the Hunga, power, and I had good power. I had good power, good technique. But it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. The distances were right. Everything was, timing was different. Everything was different, and you know. And then you see, I started to fall into learn to kickbox, and I was lucky enough, like I say, to be around good people that I could pick things up and learn quickly. Well, and put myself through it, to be fair. I used to get hidings. I used to, 1 week this side's black, the next that, my nose is this side, then that's, you know, the hard way. You have to learn. Then you become a fighter, not just a, you know. And then I started to realise, when I started to really get into it, that, well, actually, if I adjust what I've been doing with some of these, when I'm doing this, it's actually the pig. You just set it up differently, you just trigger it at a different time, the distance is slightly different, and so on and so on and so on. And then I started to be able to actually apply my Kung Fu technique, whether it's the footwork, whether it's, but you've got to understand there's an opponent in front of you, you're not doing a form. You're those Kung Fu masters, they're trying to do their forms. I seen one, it was so, in a way it was so sad, but it was hilarious. The drunken Kung Fu. It looks beautiful. It's superb, isn't it? Benefits from practicing that form, but you can't do that to somebody, can you? You know? No. And surely you must know, if you have got anything to do with fighting, you're just not going to approach it like that seriously. So I think the Chinese martial arts can't. I mean, you've only got to look at Wing Chun. I mean, it is effective, but you've got to put it in its environment. So in a self-defense situation, I mean, you always got to put yourself in your environment. You've got to create space, haven't you? You've got to make your will. So,
like, I think that, you know, the mixed martial arts side of it, because you look at all of the, every time I met someone who's done Kung Fu, they're like, oh, you did this Kung Fu, and then you go, no, and then they tell you about it, and then, you know, you could say the Chinese have been mixing martial arts forever. And, you know, the Japanese, like the same, you know, I do these things to promote Kudo, because I think, like, for me, putting the bubble on stops me having my S-shaped nose pushed on any other side of my face. You know, and I quite out there that, like, I haven't got the fire of the young man anymore. You know what I mean? I like to give, I like to try and represent, and, you know, now and again I'll throw a bit or get involved, but it's kind of it leads you in a path when you're only interested, what's the most effective form of fighting? Because it's becoming a fighter, not a martial artist, right?
Absolutely.
And there's so much beauty that seems to be being lost. So, I mean, if someone came through to your door and said, right, I've watched this film, right? So I've seen Ip Man. I've seen all of the Ip Man, right? So I know exactly what happened with Bruce Lee and all the rest of it. And I think that's great now. And I want to learn Kung Fu. Do you have like, do you kind of think, oh, right, okay, where do we start with this one? You know, or if you had someone come through and says, like, I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, how do you think your Kung Fu's going to cope against this then? You know?
Yeah, you get that. I get that, yeah. But, I mean, like, I'm genuinely interested myself anyway.
Okay.
And so, I got nothing to hide. And, you know, when I got quite deep into Shaolin Kung Fu, because, you know, when I first got to Shaolin Temple and I went to a place called Wushu Guan, the Wushu Guan, it's the Kung Fu school.
Yeah.
And I mean, the level of training there is, as you can imagine, amazing. But as I said, I've been fighting for maybe 10 years up to that point, probably 100 tournaments a year, sort of, that you're just mad, you know.
Yeah.
You realise that they're not. I mean, they have Sandar classes as well, and they're tough boys, you know.
Yeah, no doubt, right? No doubt.
Yeah. But outside of that, it's the mindset, because they're not training to fight. They're not interested. they're not really interested in fighting. They're interested in finding the fighting spirit that martial artists have. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try my best. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to relax. I'm going to learn how to breathe. They learn all those things. They learn responsibility. They learn physical. Physical. They're unbelievable specimens. I mean, everybody recognizes that. And I tell you, the most amazing thing, you see some of them, these young boys, every single day, minus 20 in the winter time, wearing these clothes, man. Minus 20, 6 o'clock in the morning, out in the dark, the damp, and you're standing there, just like this. 40 minutes. Don't move. Oh, amazing. And I mean, absolutely brings you down to earth. Absolutely brings you down to earth. But also, more than anything else, I've always said this, I've learned some amazing, going through some absolutely amazing things at Shaolin Temple, but more than anything else ever, and even now, that impresses me and I really learn about is community and the way those people are with each other. It's touching. You know, I think if you think of it like this, Shaolin Temple has been going since 1,500 years, well, nearly 1,600 years actually. One little community, the size of, smaller than Barry.
Really?
Smaller than Barry. Unbroken community. There's got to be something to be learned from that alone, to me.
I've got a question for you, right? Just because like I'm so kind of into the arts, right? That I'm like, sometimes I'm just pushing it down people's throats if they don't want to listen to me or not. Do you know what I mean? It's that level of passion. When I go to practice the Tai Chi over Barry Island, we got this. You're in the elements, right? So you've got the sea, you've got the seaside and all the rest of it, and a lovely kind of acceptance. You know, this is where I am for this next hour. There's nothing forced. It's very natural, and people love a story, right? So when I went to Beijing a while back now on the Great Wall, and I did it to raise money for a charity that I was working with, which was close to my heart. But I also did it to try to put myself across. Because I was like on this. I wonder if people if they didn't know Mal from doing martial arts, and they kind of people put you in a box, right? So you're Paul. You've been to Shaolin. You're the Shaolin monk. There you go. That's you. That's all you are. Right, and I'm wondering if I present myself to someone in another country, and not in the same way, would they still value me as a person without these things, right? And the thing I got from being in China then is when I got up in the morning to go to practice in one of the local parks, is that the British seems to take everything way too serious. The lady was just there's a little old lady, and I tell you this is my story in my group, is that she kept going like this because they were asking me to practice, and I'm like, doing this because I built this up in my head that but it's like, hang on a minute, this is nothing special, kids. It's part of their culture. This is what they do. This is very natural and unforced. And then when I come back and I'm saying to people, and I'm not using the word cheat, I'm just saying just to relax, try to find, your center, just your balance, you work on your center of gravity, that sort of thing. As soon as you start giving Chinese terms to people, and when I say I've been to China, they go, oh, that's it, he must know his stuff, right? And it gives credibility to things. But I've noticed that people do exploit that when they, if they've been somewhere. Do you think there's a difference between, obviously there's a big difference in our culture and the way that we go about things. Like you couldn't just rock up to your local park with a sword around here to practice, because you're going to get arrested. But you could, so what would you say? You've been away a long time, and you come back, and you're trying to bring that culture right into the Welsh culture in the north. Is that what you fair to say?
That's exactly what my aim is. That's my goal in life, if you like. Because I mean, you touched on it earlier on about mental health, this thing about combat, and this is the point to me. I mean, I spent so long trying to develop and understand and sharpen the fighting capabilities and understand the fighting capabilities. At the end of the day, I think I've proven to myself I know it is actually effective.
Yeah.
With mixed martial arts, as you say, there's so much of Chinese martial arts already there. I was watching Habib, and what a great fight that was. Wasn't he amazing?
Yeah.
And you see, he's using Chinese martial arts as well. You know, swing chow and all of that. The way he uses his hips, his shoulders, he uses everything, doesn't he? You know.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, all these. I seen him using iron shirt practice, and I see a lot of boxers actually using it now.
Right.
You know, there's no doubt that some of these kung fu punches and strikes are effective, but it's who can apply them.
Right. Yeah. It's about the individual, isn't it?
Leaving the fighting aside, coming to the other side of it, we were talking about, which is what I really want to focus on, because for me, exactly as you just described yourself, I'm of the same heart as you.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in that side. I'm more interested in what it can do for people rather than, you know, that side. I'm satisfied. I can defend myself.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied that if I'm teaching people this can defend you, that my conscience is clear, it can. You know, that's what it's about. If you're teaching somebody something and you want to be truthful with them, not say you can beat anybody or anything nonsense like that, but make them understand. If you want to be a fighter, then you have to train like a fighter. If I'm not at the moment, I'm not training any fighters. I'm not training any kickboxing or anything like that. Yeah, I just concentrate on traditional.
But that's been my point. Yeah, I like my group, my Tai Chi group, for instance, because if you think of my foundation and my grades, if you like, and my pedigree has been mainly in the harder arts and the Japanese arts, like, you know, the karate and the kudo and that type of thing. You know, that legitimizes my training, if you like, because I can box. You know, we went through the Thai boxing era, and it was like one thing to another. I mean, you'll get this. It's like there was always that. Oh, that's rubbish because you've got to go boxing. And now the boxing's not doing so well because Thai boxing's in the town. Now Thai boxing's out of the town. It was the shoot fighters in the local community. They're just taking people down, man. You want to see them. And then it went on like this. And then eventually it just become mixed martial arts. And I think that's quite a dangerous thing, because it could mean that people with very little skill in lots of different martial arts could bring something together and just open up in a village hall somewhere. And particularly teach things quite dangerous with no culture, no understanding, no real hardship there. And I see that quite a lot in certain Tai Chi circles where there's no understanding. They've never really tested anything. So everything that's been taught to them is like second-hand, and there's a belief system and mechanism being there, and it's got no core to it. And I'll go and teach my group, or lead my group, I'd like to say, the Tai Chi, because I don't claim to be any sort of expert at it. I've practiced it for a very long time as a very sick boy, right up into my adulthood, and now it's so close to my heart that you couldn't tell me I can't teach it, because that is it, and the people follow me get that from me, you know. And do you think that, like, I mean, I can see that that you've got a very solid foundation, and that gives you the confidence to be able to say, look, I'm not teaching fighters and stuff. I actually want to get the goodness across to people, the best part of it. Do you feel that people are a little bit afraid to get involved still because they see it as just fighting?
Well, I get, you know, if we look at the two sides, I get ones that do actually want to fight. And that's all they're interested in. How can I kill somebody with one blow kind of mentality? And there are real people like that. And then on the other hand, I just want to be at one. I don't want to say I just want peace. But they're two absolute ridiculous extremes, and everybody is somewhere on that. And so I mean, it's a case of all I have is a kung fu syllabus. If anybody is welcome, it doesn't matter which end of the scale you are. I can't turn anybody away. I can't choose people to come. Anybody that comes, I treat everybody the same. If they're following the syllabus, if they're following the traditional lessons that I'm going through, what will happen is I'll say this because I say this to their face anyway, the hairy-fairy ones, they'll start to understand, oh, actually, I'm living in a dream world. This isn't real. I need to broaden my horizons.
Yeah.
The ones the other side,
Yeah.
they'll start to hopefully understand, actually, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not as tough as I think I am.
Okay.
Actually, I should show people a little bit of respect.
Yeah.
Now, as long as either one of those extremes, if they carry on training, after 6 months, their attitude will be different.
Yeah,
After
definitely.
a year or 2 years, they'll be completely different.
Yeah.
Or they may fall off before that time.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, there's always this kind of yin and yang situation when you practice martial arts. All the questions always are the same.
Yeah.
Mental, is it about mental health and peace, or is it about war and domination?
Sure.
It's a fine line, and the line moves all the time.
Sure.
With different situations, different ages, different whatever it is. The core of the training is to be in that balance. You see, this is the thing.
Yeah.
So I think you have to understand what it's like really fighting. You don't understand technique. You can't actually. You see, when we practice a kung fu, the basics of kung fu, a big part of us with being a fighter is conditioning your body, strengthening your body, building the energy in your body.
Yeah.
What you do with that then, you can use that for learning fighting technique and sparring and the rest of it, or you can use that just to carry on developing yourself and using it in a different way.
Yeah.
You've created the same thing, and that's what we want. Well-balanced human being that has got the capability, if he wants to take a big challenge on, like taking up a combat sport and potentially being a champion.
Yeah.
At the other side of it, you've still got exactly the same capability of being, I don't know, whatever their potential, whatever is in their heart to follow.
Yeah.
But you've created that core in that person that they can be balanced, happy in their life, positive in their life, and a positive influence on other people. That's the core aim, if you like, of practicing Shaolin Kung Fu, to develop people that are happy with themselves and can be a positive influence on
I mean,
them, you know?
the fights, they like you. I mean, you said it earlier, and there's one thing. There's a consistent fight, but it's never with anyone else, is it? It's always with yourself. So it's
absolutely.
You know, and you eloquently put that earlier on in the interview. And you know, I still, when I see people that have kind of just totally switched off, and they've found or they've accepted, I think, of who they are to a certain point. You know, and it's not the same for everyone, and I think that. Like, I'm still striving through the martial arts. It still affects me when, you know, I'll get somebody maybe online that says, oh, you don't know, you know, your ass from your elbow, I can tear your head off. And I'm, you know, the ego comes out and goes, what, you reckon? Bring it, you know. And then there's other times I'm like, you know, I'm just so past this that you've got to see the benefits in you know, experience of the arts. And as martial arts, we've got to connect together. So there's a few people that, you know, I totally agree with in their very strong approach towards things, and you know, their acceptance. And I think that's what I always see with the Chinese systems, that they're a lot more accepting of other things rather than compartmentalizing, because of their harmony, like you're saying, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I mean, I've gone self-employed during COVID, which was not intentional. It was I was made redundant, but it was I accepted the redundancy because I was ready for the next kind of era of my life, because I really do think that martial arts can change lives and be what people are looking for. You know, I got a father figure from it, a mentor, you know, a life coach. I got everything. So, you know, but we're not connected enough. I think that's the issues. We're not able to support each other, and that's another thing I found with this lockdown again, is that we reach further than our own communities when you look, you know, with the internet and things. So that kind of brings me on to my last question, really, is that I've got a little bit of a dilemma, right? Obviously, being practicing karate for so long, that Kata was a big part of that training. So the solo practice, repetition. You know, you've got your arm 3 inches in the wrong direction, your head's not lifted up, and you know, you feel like one of those little, you're twisting around and put your arms up, and and then you get to a point with Kata that you think, you know, you're no longer And I was seeing another article, patterns or forms. And you get to that point, you think, well, I get the benefit of that. But surely solo practice, and then again, there's a lot going online at the minute, and people make a lot of money out of applications from these forms. This is this, and then they legitimize it by showing a UFC fight or something. And I get where they're going with that, but you know yourself, the only way you're actually going to learn these skills is in live combat. And actually, you know, kata and forms were a way of passing it on. We didn't have videos, we didn't have all of this tech that we've got now, you know. So I'm starting to think to myself, look, I've got all of these things to teach. I've got striking from distance, I've got joint manipulation, I've got throws, knees, then I've got all of the ground wrestling, whether it's BJJ, whatever you want to call these different things. How do I teach all this syllabus and still teach all of this repetition of these katas? So I'm thinking to myself, right, do I just bin a load of these katas off? And then I'm like, oh, right, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep them because tradition says so. So, you know, do you still think, I mean, you're teaching, I've seen some of the forms, and they're absolutely beautiful. And, you know, they're the type of thing that would inspire someone to go, my God, I would love to be able to do that. And like you said about having, you know, the foot up in the air for, I watched the Wheel of Life when the Shaolin came to Bristol, and I was sat right by this little man, and for the whole first set, he was stood with his leg against his head. And I missed the first set because I was waiting for his leg to come down, you know. It's like, I don't know what's going on. So that, I mean, those memories are very, very precious to me. And I feel like if I removed kata totally from what I'm doing, I would be almost stealing that from someone coming through the door, because I could tell them all of the grandmasters' names and stuff. It means nothing to them. You know, they just want to do that cool stuff. So, you know, what do you think of forms now? And do you think they're very, you know, it's still a legitimate way of training?
Yeah, absolutely I do. I mean, I think it's down to this. I mean, separating martial arts from combat sports. You know, I think that's where the distinction is. Now, there is obviously crossover. There's crossover in the side that, as I say, a lot of effective martial arts combat technique comes from traditional martial arts. Undoubtedly, you know, it'd be silly not to recognize that. But actually, on the other side as well, and this is what, I mean, again, we talk about Khabib, what a man as well, not just what a fighter, what a cool man.
Yeah, he accepted our legacy, didn't he? I mean,
you know, I mean, you've got to look up to somebody like that. You have to respect that, and inspiration, isn't it?
Yeah.
You look at Anthony Joshua, Golovkin. These are, and you hear Tyson Fury.
Yeah.
I mean, what he's got from boxing, what it's done for him, and for so many countless others. You know, even for combat sports, people who are world champions, so that focused on being the best, even how much they mentally and whatever, you know. So it does both ways. So and I think the traditional, if you lost the kata, I think it would be a big loss. And I do think what exactly what you said as well, that to me, we have to, the ancestors is important. You know, I'm from Shaolin Temple background and Chinese Kung Fu background. You know, I can recite all the masters back every generation. From I'm 33rd generation, I can recite it back. Going to Damo. The tradition is important because as a gratitude, and as not just out of a loyalty and, you know, but there's a practical value to it as well. It doesn't have, I mean, what happens by remembering the older ones, what was their contribution, and you put them in line, then you want to do the honor to that. So you want to do better. It's a motivating tool. What we call in the martial arts is mindfulness. When we come into my training room, we do little things like this. It's not a big deal, but it's a signal. Shaolin Kung Fu, you see, it's gone for thousands of years. Each master has dedicated his life, his whole life to it, given up everything. Then he's passed everything on to somebody that's dedicated his life to that master. You've got to understand, after 1,000 odd years, it's good, top quality, cutting edge stuff. It's still developing now, remember. Don't think they're not watching the MMA. Don't think they're not watching, you know, when a few years ago, when the Thai boxing was taking off, and to the West and this sort of stuff, there were monks going over to Thailand quietly, going there, training, competing, Thai monks coming over to Shaolin Temple, and they were exchanging stuff, you know. There's of course the pride thing in Shaolin Temple, because it's what a name to live up to. So they're well aware of the stuff, and they've got people. I mean, there's one in London, Shi Yong Jie, 34th generation monk. Wow, and amazing. He was the Sandat national champion.
Right. Okay.
Fantastic fighter, powerhouse of a man. And there's another one based in Birmingham, Shi Yong Jie. Again, absolute what you'd call a beast. Really what you'd call a beast, you know. The incredible power on them, you know. But they've got the same basics, but they've been funneled not into the forms. They know the forms, because the techniques actually come out of the forms, but you've got to put them in their place and then train them in the right way, you see. Because the basic forms give you the flexibility and the conditioning. But in the Kung Fu system, you see, there's certain keys to the forms, if you like.
Right.
Some are just basic catalogues. But there's codes in them. If some, you know, some are in there, these are training drills. Some of these are actual techniques. These are a tactic. These are, and then some of them are geared towards a certain kind of technique within the body. So how to develop what we say, power trend, smashing energy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Which is great. You know, you can if you see a form using that or fadging people know. You can see how that could be applied to martial art. You use it a lot in the styles, especially. But at the same time, you're learning qigong as you're learning these techniques.
Right. Okay.
Breath control. And that is doing the health for you. So I'm saying you've always got two sides, but the trick is actually it's not. They say balancing, integrating is the word. That's what it's about. So after the thousands of years of Shaolin Kung Fu practice and research, all those things are integrated into the forms. So it'll be the same thing with the kata, because I mean the idea of doing kata, it comes from China anyway. How it is with the Chinese forms, the Shaolin Temple ones more so than the sort of derivatives of Shaolin Kung Fu.
Sure.
The derivatives are much more orientated towards fighting techniques. The Shaolin Temple, all Shaolin Temple forms are the core of the principles of them. It's the core principle of how to approach a fight and to train to fight, you know.
I mean, I always felt like the way the Japanese received it were not, and maybe the Okinawans, you know, the way they passed the kata was that it was, you can see it was like an attempt to grab certain information for what they were learning from the Chinese, and with it was a little bit easier to decipher, I think, in some of the. I mean, it's interesting to hear that obviously there's different forms to develop the body in different ways for different things. Because I mean, that's not something that crossed my mind, if I'm honest. It was because the way the kata was, you know, say the guy was quite short and stocky, you know, his kata would be all very smash and grab and throw and twist. And then if the kata was a little bit more evasional, you know, there was a little bit more length in the person's technique, and it was contextual, you know. So it's similar, but a lot more simplified, you know. And I think like that, and that's as an art. I think that's why a lot of you know, the karate gurus, if you like, they're going back to Chinese roots to try to, you know, expand on that element and that era, you know. But you know, I think like that, just kind of going from what you were just saying then, though, it's I found that it's really you got to look beyond yourself, because I've taught people for a long time, and the ones that are doing it just for themselves in a very kind of intrinsic focus on their training, they can't look beyond that, and they can't see the reason of doing something for somebody else. Whereas I started as a martial artist, I just wanted to be liked by the instructor, I liked him, I wanted to learn from him. I didn't particularly want to fight, and then if it meant I had to fight to keep his respect, I would do that. And then you always end up in situations that are not motivated by yourself. And as an adult, then when I can choose not to fight, I choose not to fight. And I think I suppose thank you for that, because that's helped me a lot, because the kata for me was not something. It was an easy out with the fight, if I'm honest. You hear a lot of people talking about forms. It's kind of, I spend a lot of time practicing that. I still feel like I'm fighting, but I'm not. But it's that kind of beauty in being able to share things with somebody, and you can stand side by side with someone, can you, or in front of people, and share the experience. So it's beyond self and more building others and community. And I think that's the space that I enjoy the most these days.
To be honest, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of people actually like forms anyway, because I mean, it's expressive, it's a good way of training. There's so much to offer with forms, isn't it? So, and like I said, for me to think it's so cool anyway, to think that these forms, somebody 750 years ago was practicing these same movements, and the more that you explore them, and the more layers you peel off them, they reveal things to you. Even after 20 years of practicing a form, you're still finding out things, still finding improvements and this sort of stuff. And it's what that process is doing to you, of practicing that form and thinking, and discovering these new things, different ways of relaxing, and amounts of tension to hold it, subtle things, and I know that happens in the kata as well, even in the basic katas like that. See, the grandmasters, it's like kung fu.
It is. I mean, the earliest karate katas were a lot smoother.
So, I mean, I would, just to pass that on, that somebody has passed this on, and they've put these things together for our benefit. That's the way I look at it, and I'm just so grateful,
Well, well, you've made up my mind. I'm going to continue. I think, like with COVID as well, I've been thinking about all of the outside training. It's changed a lot of people's concepts of actually, not being stuck inside, getting out, even if it's raining, looking for places to shelter, experiencing. I mean, let's face it, I'm biased. I'm sure you are, but we do live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. And we have a very, very friendly culture. People are a lot more accepting of things as well. So I'm going to continue to develop in the south, and I hope that you'll continue to develop in the north. And if we have an opportunity to crush that mountain, I'd love if I could join in on one of your sessions. Maybe we could do a side session or something. Absolutely. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Paul. Thank you very much for your time.
Really good.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.